Just over to the right-hand side of the boat there, you can see a place called Mount Rex over to the right there. Now, Mount Rex is actually the site of Atlas Ready Mix from Takaputa, the Atlas Concrete. It's their sand depot. You'll see all that white sand ashore there. Well, that sand is suction dredged from right out in the middle of the Kaipara Harbour between Poto Point and the South Kaipara Peninsula. You'll see the big suction dredges there. They'll do up to 2 trips in a 24-hour period. They'll dredge the sand there, and it's brought back to this location to the right where it's then unloaded before being taken by trucks through to Auckland for use in their different concrete building products. It's a very high quality white sand we had down there on the Kaipara heads. Now you can see at this stage of our journey where the river forks. Over to the left-hand side of the boat there, the river carries on out into the harbour. We'll be heading down there later on today, but for now we're going to make a turn to the right and head into the Kaukapakapa River. Now the river we're making our way into, the Kaukapakapa River, is very typical of the many hundreds and hundreds of miles of inland rivers and waterways which make up the Kaipara estuary. The Kaukapakapa River goes for many miles inland. In fact, the headwaters of this particular river rise to within 5 miles of Orewa on the east coast. And in times gone by, river was very important, firstly for the big timber ships to make their way into the mill sites which are here on the Kaukapakapa River, and of course later on those small river steamers and cutters would make their way into the Kaukapakapa River to service the needs of those early settlers and of course provide that very necessary link back to the railhead at Helensville. We're going to have a little bit of a look now into the Kaukapakapa River.
That's another cargo ship.
area we're making our way into now is known as Whakatiwai. Now Whakatiwai was one of the very first areas in the southern part of the Kaipara to be milled over. It was in 1844 it was acquired by the Elthwaite family. Now Whakatiwai was originally a block of some 2,500 acres of bush and scrubland. The Elthwaite family was responsible for the milling of the biggest proportion of kauri timber from this area. Over the left-hand side of the boat, this is where they had the old mill site. This was the original mill site over to the left there. And some of the photographs in our museum there at Helensville show some of these ships right up in the river here, loading the timber to be taken away overseas. A lot of this very early timber from around this area was directly exported to Australia. Went from Kaipara here through to both Melbourne and Sydney for the construction of those cities there.
Sit down.
Now you'll see the start of the bush reserve over to the left-hand side of the boat, and it runs for some miles along the side of the river there. And you'll see a lot of our native bush in there, and particularly you'll see a lot of kowhai up in the bush there. Now the kowhai, that's that lighter, fluffy-looking tree, that lighter green, the fluffy-looking tree right through the bush there. In September, October, we get the kowhai coming into flower here, and certainly very beautiful indeed at that time of year with the flowering kowhai in the bush here.
Oh, there's the road up there, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, wave to the children in the window.
I gotta take her to
they got their little dinghy there. They've got their little dinghy there.
Now, just over to the left-hand side of the boat there, you can see a lot of our very beautiful New Zealand native bush over there. There's a lot of kaihikatea in there, there's rata, there's rimu, there's totara and tarari. And of course there's those young kauri trees, those tall, straight young kauri rickers.
I take the front of the road.
Anyone not too familiar with our New Zealand kauri, directly to the left-hand side of the boat now, you can see the long tall stem running skywards and all the foliage at the top of the tree there. That's our New Zealand kauri, or a young kauri, what they also known as a kauri rika or a rika kauri. Now what we actually call them a young kauri tree, those kauri trees are around about 150 years old, such as the slow growth rate of our New Zealand kauri. And right up across the bush there to the left, you can see the young kauri trees running right back into the bush. This is why those sailors first brought those big sailing ships, those giant windjammers, right into this harbour and into these very rivers. That was to get access to those young kauri trees, which they found to be an excellent material for the mast and spars on the sailing ships. Now, we've been talking today about the way they used to bring these big ships right up into the rivers here, and of course there's not much of a river to get any sort of vessel into today. But one must remember that over the years these rivers have really silted and shallowed up. Firstly with the taking of the kauri and the other vegetation, the consequent erosion has made the river silt and shallow. Advent of the mangroves, now those mangroves have only been here 160, 170 years or so. The advent of the mangroves has made the rivers close in a lot. And in latter years, there's been a lot of flood control on the farmlands. Waterways and watercourses are being diverted. Dams are being built. And we don't get that big freshwater flushing effect down these rivers anymore. That means a lot of these rivers in and around the Kaipara Harbour, where once you can get sizable vessels into, today are very slowly silting up and dying.
That little cheese in there if you want it. Yeah, take one of them for mine.
Got you.
What?
Speedboat. And you.
Huh?
And you.
No.
Mother.
What? Oh. Oh, look at the waves, Lucy. Look.
Now the area of bush that we're looking at now to the left-hand side of the boat in a lot of ways remind us of what these rivers and creeks were like before the Europeans came and took the bush away. In the early days there was in bush, similar to what we got on the left-hand side of the boat, right down to both sides of the water's edge here. The mangroves wouldn't have been here, and with the river a lot deeper and a lot cleaner, certainly would have been very beautiful in here indeed. In this particular area of bush there's some 26 different species of New Zealand native trees. And one could just imagine the awe and the amazement of those early European settlers when they came to Kaipara and they found many, many hundreds of miles of bush-lined rivers similar to this that they had to make their way through to find their new homes.
You're fine.
Now anyone not too familiar with our kowhai, directly to the left-hand side of the boat, overhanging the river, that fluffy tree you can see, and that's our kowhai, and as I was saying, September of every year we get the yellow flower right across the bush here, and it's certainly very beautiful indeed at that time of year here in the river.
Vanessa couldn't have come today.
Wow. It's beautiful
She
back
could
in
have missed
there.
that just one family meeting, couldn't she? That was every weekend.
Right?
Couldn't she have just missed the one family meeting then?
She said she was going.
Yeah. Great.
Wave.
Yeah, the surfboard. Hey, Tom.
What's a surfboard?
Things that people go out in the sea on and stand on. You've seen them going like that over the waves on TV? It's called surfing.
Wow, we're far away now. Picture cheese.
Huh?
Yeah, look at that there. There. The waves. And that's the island.
Yeah, lucky you had that.
Hey.
before. Yeah, concentrate on what you're doing with it. Oh, don't touch any of those. Just touch those ones, okay? No, we won't go anywhere else. Only that. When we showed you before.
I can go in and get a bite. This one. I've got the special kind of use little one this one. I can. This is really, really big here. Time cat. Time cat.
Just over to the right-hand side of the boat there, you can see we've come back in against the railway line there. Now this is the main trunk line north, heads north from Auckland up through Helensville, carries on across to Whangarei, Maurewa, Kaukapakapa areas. Now there's no scheduled passenger trains running north of Auckland these days, but the railway line here to the right as time's gone by was a major link for those early settlers living in Northland. Although there's no passenger trains running into Northland these days, the freight trains regularly make their way across the railway line there to the right, servicing the freight needs of Northland.
Mike's got his on his wrist as well. Keep it on the wrist and hold the camera. Huh? Someone's passed away. Yeah. No, it's not as nice as that downstairs. It'll be windier up there too.
That's my one.
That's Michael's.
Yeah. Looks like it, eh? Oh no, here comes Mike's house here.
That's a picture of the house. Look.
What's that for Mike's house?
Mama sold hers and she's bought that over there. And you're going to come and fix it up for me.
Not me. Tommy. Tommy's go fix it.
Yeah, well, you careful of that one now.
Dad fixes this up here to £20 per week.
Oh, that's all right. That's not bad.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Yep. Good.
Take some photos, Tom? No. Yeah, we're going around the corner again.
Yeah.
What's that bridge over there?
This river goes all the way out.
up on the new bridge.
Oh, we just come by the new bridge, yeah.
Just over to the right-hand side of the boat, then running back up into the hills there is the proposed site of a gas-fired power station. Genesis Energy is proposing to construct a gas-fired power station over to the right there, all tied up in the environment court there at the moment. And it's not the fact we've got natural gas under the ground here or anything, but the gas pipeline between the Kapuni gas fields and Marsden Point, it runs under the river here somewhere about where we are now. And with the national grid, the big heavy-duty power wires fairly close proximity, river here for calling, Genesis Energy has identified this as quite a good place to establish a gas-fired power station. So that's what they intend to do, and as I say, it's all tied up in the environment court there at the moment. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the river goes for many more miles inland. As I was saying earlier on, the headwaters of this particular river rise to within 5 miles of O River on the east coast. And in times gone by, those small river steamers and cutters would make their way right into the settlement of Kaukapakapa to service the needs of the early settlers. And this was the scenario right throughout the Kaipara Harbour, where the many hundreds and hundreds of miles of inland waterways and river systems were extensively used by those early settlers as their link, their lifeline to the outside world. Very often we can go some further distance inland, around about another 2 miles inland. We can go on a fairly big spring tide, but today we're going to make a turn about where we are, start heading back to the main river and then down to the harbour itself. If you're wondering where we are, just ahead of the boat, that is the Punganui Road Bridge. That's on the road between Helensville and Kaukapakapa, and a little river there called Punganui River, and they're just constructing a new bridge across there at the moment.
That's close, eh?
Huh?
It's close.
Yeah, it's close.
How can I stop it?
Because he's turning.
We can turn around.
Look, you have a look at how close he is with the back.
How come he's turning?
We're going back down. We're going to another part. Over the sheep. See, now he's reversing. Now he's going sideways.
Now all this kauri you can see, of course, is regrowth kauri. This was one of the very first areas to be milled over for the kauri timber, and most of those kauris you can see around about 160, 170 years old. But of course, when those sailors first brought the big ships into this river there, it would have been the big tall kauri forest coming right down to the water's edge. The whole European civilization of the Kaipara region actually grew up around the kauri timber industry. Over 100 years ago, ships from many nations would make their way in through the narrow shoreline areas of the Kaipara and into the many small creeks and rivers of the harbour in search of the lucrative cargoes of kauri timber. More than 1.2 million hectares of kauri forest was built from around the Kaipara estuary, loaded directly onto waiting sailing ships for export away overseas.
Take a photo of you. Thomas. Tom. Tom.
It's very natural. Oh, look at the plane, Tom. Tom, take a bit. Over there, through the trees.
Everyone's gone downstairs.
Right there. Too hot. Ridiculous.
Nice.
A nice breeze.
Yeah.
Breeze.
Zooms up good.
Over here.
Climb out in a minute.
Over here. Lucy, climb out. Yeah, down there.
Put you in with the life jacket.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we're making our way down through the river here, you'll notice these little inlets, these little gutways running into the mangroves. You can see on both sides of the boat here at the moment. Now those little gutways go for some distance inland and they're a favourite haunt for the eel fishermen. Now there's a big commercial eel fishery here on the Kaipara River, has been for many years. Very often when we're out here we'd see the eel fishermen with their nets strung right across the gutways, and it's not uncommon for them to catch up to 40 or 50 of these big slimy eels in one setting. Eels are anything up to about a metre long. Now a real interesting thing happens to the eels when they're caught here on the river. They're taken through to a processing plant in Auckland. The eels are allowed to live in fresh water for anything up to 4 or 5 days. At that stage the eels are then frozen. Now they're frozen alive down to a controlled temperature. And when the eels reach that controlled temperature, they go into a hibernation stage. And to look at them, you'd think they were dead. They lie there all listless. They don't move around. At that stage, the eels are then exported. They're either flown across to Europe for the European market or perhaps into Asia for the Asian markets. Now, when the eels get across to Europe or Asia, they're allowed to thaw out. And when they thaw out, they become alive again as such, and they're all wriggling around. That means the eels which are caught here on the Kaipara River, anything up to 25, perhaps 35 days, are all wriggling around as live as anything on the market tables in Europe or Asia to be purchased and taken home for the person's dinner. gentlemen, on our way down through the river, one of the other things you would have noticed is the many, many acres of mangroves on the side of the riverbank. Across to the right-hand side of the boat there, you can see the new mangroves making their way out to the river as the riverbank extends itself into the river itself. Over the other side, left-hand side of the boat, some of those older mangroves are starting to die off as the river erodes its way into the farmland. This river, almost like a living animal, will completely move and change its course over a period of years. Now, an interesting thing about the mangroves was that in the early days when the first Europeans came into the Kaipara Harbour, the mangroves weren't here. It was with the taking of the giant kauri forest from the high hills which surround the harbour. When they took the forest away, there's a lot of erosion, a lot of silting. The topsoil silted down into the creeks and rivers of the Kaipara, silted them up, made them somewhat the colour that you see them today. But the other thing it was to do was to provide an environment for the mangroves, and hence today we've got many hundreds of acres of mangroves on the banks of the rivers of the Kaipara Harbour. Now, one thing I've noticed personally with these mangroves, I guess in the last 15 to 20 years, has been the massive growth spurt of the mangroves. They've really got a lot taller, thicker and denser, these mangroves, and I think a lot of it's to do with the somewhat warmer climates that we're getting these days, and also a lot more fertiliser being applied to the farmland, and a lot of this fertiliser runs down into the waterways here, somewhat still active, and that also assists the mangroves with their growth, but certainly a huge growth spurt with the mangroves in the last few years.
Daddy got ready at home for our lunch when we get back. Go and ask him.
ladies and gentlemen, we're leaving the river behind us now and we're making our way out and into the Kaipara Harbour itself. And the Kaipara Harbour is the largest enclosed harbour in the southern hemisphere. It's actually got a coastline which stretches over 3,200 kilometres. 5 major rivers make this great waterway up in the northern end of the harbour. We've got the massive northern Wairoa River which runs right up past Burkesdale and has its origins in the Hikarangi swamps north of Whangarei. There's then the Otamatea River. The Otamatea River runs the areas of Pahi, Badley, Mangaroto, Kaiwaka, and of course up by that very fine museum there at Parakai. A little bit further south we've got the Orofelo or Port Albert River. That particular river runs right into Tihana on State Highway 1. Further south again we've got the Tauhara River. A lot of carry mills on the Tauhara River in the early days. And the fifth river in the harbour is the river which we've travelled through today, the Kaipara River itself. As I was saying a moment ago, the river in the northern end of the harbour, the northern Wairoa River, it has its origins in the Hikarangi swamps north of Whangarei. The river in the southern end of the harbour, the Kaipara River, which we've travelled through today, it has its origins in the Waitakere Ranges, west of Auckland. So when we look at this great waterway from Hikarangi in the north, right through to Waitakere in the south, you can certainly see it encompasses a massive area of water. In fact, more than 2/3 of Northland landmass is drained by a river, a stream or a tributary of the Kaipara Harbour. Just as we leave the river to cover landmarks to the left-hand side of the boat, firstly that range of hills you're looking into to the left, that is the South Kaipara Peninsula. South Kaipara Peninsula forms part of that range of hills which runs all the way from the Waitakere Ranges right through to the very tip of the entrance of the Kaipara Harbour. South Kaipara Peninsula across to the left protects the Kaipara Harbour and the low-lying lands from the Tasman Sea, which is only a few miles beyond those high hills to the left-hand side of the boat there. In fact, look along the skyline of the South Kaipara Peninsula, you can see where the sand from the west coast is encroached through. Always a problem on the peninsula has been the sand coming in through from the west coast, and you'll see the sand over to the left there on the skyline as it comes through into the farmland there. Now, to the left, you also see a little bit of a housing area over to the left there. This is all part of the Haranui Marae area. Quite a lot of Maori land over there. There's a pass site, the Haranui Pass site, directly to the left-hand side of the boat there. And you pass through an area of Haranui as you head out from Helensville, from Parakai where you boarded. If you're heading out the South Kaipara Peninsula Road, you'll go through the area of Haranui there. Now, there's a large area of Maori land, around about 9,000 acres, which forms the Otakanini Maori block there, and it's extensively farmed these days in both sheep and beef cattle across there. Take that road these days to keep you off the State Highway 1 very busy times and that. So if you take that alternative route between Kaukapakapa and Wellington, State Highway 16, leading up to those high hills to the right-hand side of the boat, a little bit north of Kaukapakapa. Now, there's also a low-lying area of land to the right, jutting out of the Kaipara Harbour, directly to the right-hand side of the boat there. Well, that low-lying area of land is what we call Jordan's Island. Now, we still call Jordan's Island an island, but it's actually been reclaimed and it's now part of the mainland. Over the last 70 to 80 years around the Kaipara Harbour, there's been a lot of reclamation. A lot of the low-lying swampy marshlands have been reclaimed and turned into fairly good quality farmland. Particularly in the case of Jordan's Island, there's a very good dairy unit operating there on Jordan's Island today. In the early days around the Kaipara Harbour, with these huge amounts of kauri timber being milled, boat building industry soon sprang up. 1903, Davies Brothers had these shipyards on Jordan's Island. They built many fine schooners and cutters across there on Jordan's Island. All these vessels being built from the very high quality kauri timber, which was milled from those high hills that we can see beyond Jordan's Island there today. Now, a little bit more recent history about Jordan's Island. It was back in the middle of the 1970s that the government of the day intended to establish New Zealand's first nuclear power plant across there on Jordan's Island. They did a lot of test drilling out there to make sure the island was stable enough to take the weight of the big reactors. They did a lot of tests on the harbour to make sure there's enough tidal flow for the cooling of the reactors. It was only due to the political considerations of the day that the nuclear power plant across there on Jordan's Island never went ahead. But they were very serious about it, because if you take a look at the national grid, the big heavy duty power wires, and you can see them over to the right there, they take an unexplained loop right down into Jordan's Island for no apparent reason.
beach. Beach, Shell Beach. Huh? What's that? Thinking you will go. Eh? Thinking you. Don't touch the controls. Look, he's moving it.
Oh, you just moved the controls.
You did.
Oh, you.
You're bored.
You're bored.
You're a grommet. Don't. I'm recording. You're making your camera jump. Where's your camera? Where's your camera? Huh? Don't talk about what I'm recording. Oh, come and get your child. Yes, your father.
That was talking.
Stop it. See? You warned. Don't. I'll tell on you again. Baruta.
So just looking over to the left-hand side of the boat there, we're looking into what is known as the Emotoki Estuary, or more locally known, I guess, as the South Creek. This is very typical of the many, many hundreds and hundreds of miles of inland waters, or inland estuaries, inland waterways which make up the Kaipara Harbour. Now, it looks like there's a lot of water over there at the moment, and indeed at the moment we could take Kewpie Too right over to where the cliff line is there, and that little beach is. But at low tide, it's a completely different story. For within about 100 metres of where the boat is, now over to the left, all that area will completely dry out. And when it does dry out, it leaves many acres of mud and shellbank there. And it's a great area for the bird life. Godwits, knots, terns, other wading birds will make their way onto the mud and the shellbank here at low tide and gorge themselves on the food that they find there. So if we're out here at low tide, it would be a completely different scene from what we're seeing now. We'd have mud and shellbank in this estuary all the way ashore there. Also over to the right, beyond the channel there, within about, I don't know, 200-300 metres there, that would also be all mud and shellbank as well. The Kaipara Harbour's got a very high tidal rise and fall, some 14 feet from high water to low water. And it is said that the area of the Kaipara Harbour reduces by more than 1/3 between high water and low water, so it's a completely different scene when we're out here at low tide from what we're seeing here at the moment. Now, also in the shallow estuary system, such as the left-hand side of the boat, it's a great area for the flounder fishermen. A lot of the commercial and recreational fishermen, they'll net all over in that area to the left, and some very good catches of these big yellow-bellied flounder can be recorded out of these shallow estuary systems here. Now this is where just come around a little bit there, you'll see over to the left-hand side of the boat up on top of the cliff line, there's a fairly new subdivision over there to the left. Now that's out at Shelley Beach there, and it's one of about 3 or 4 subdivisions which have gone in here on the South Kaipara Peninsula within the last, I guess, 5 to 8 years. The whole face of the South Kaipara Peninsula has changed in the last, I guess, 10 years. Prior to 10 years ago, it was mainly farms out here, both dairy and deer. They've had a lot of deer farms out here, but a lot of those farms have now been cut up for lifestyle blocks, a lot of 10, 20 acre lifestyle blocks, plus the subdivisions, such as you can see to the left, are now out here on the South Kaipara Peninsula.
2-hour trip and only lasts 2.5 hours the battery. They'll get cheaper. So is that Shelley Beach? Yeah. Okay.
Are we coming into Shelley Beach?
That's Shelley Beach over there.
Shelley Beach. Dad, we're gonna hit another boat.
Their store has good little fish
Big ice creams in that shop. Big ice creams in that shop.
and fish and chips.
We didn't go for fish and chips. We just went up for it at the time. We were there for ice cream.
Yeah.
Like a 2-litre container. On a night. Are you videoing?
So much commerce around the Kaipara industry in the early days, and the kauri, timber industry, the gum, flax and boat building industry, the early settlers needed Shelley Beach to be a major port and a major township. They even had the railway line all surveyed off to come through to Shelley Beach, and they had the plans of a rather large village all laid out here for Shelley Beach. However, with the demise of the kauri timber industry, none of these plans came to any avail. Now, one of the social events that's been held around the Kaipara Harbour for many years now have been the regattas, with the many small mill towns and bush camps around the harbour relying exclusively on water transport for their survival, livelihood and access. Virtually every person had a vessel or a craft of some description, and very shortly regattas sprung up between the many small mill towns, and the competition was very fierce. For well over 100 years now, there's been an annual regatta held here at Shelley Beach. There's still one held February, March of every year. It's attended by launches from Dargaville, Pahi, Port Albert, Tinapine, and of course Helensville. Shelley Beach has a small permanent population. It used to be way under 100 there, but of course with the new subdivision, there's around about 120, 130 people living out here at Shelley Beach these days. You can drive the way out here to Shelley Beach from where we got on board Kewpie Too. It takes around about 25-30 minutes to drive out here to Shelley Beach, and it's mostly well known as a very popular launching area for both the commercial and recreational fishermen who try their luck here on the Kaipara. There's also a small camping ground there. A lot of people come out here and they'll motor caravan or caravan, etc., and they'll stay in the camping ground there. The building you can see ashore there, that's a little cafe and bar in there at Shelley Beach. You'll see the wharf there. Now, the local council had a bit of money in 1990 didn't know what to do with, so they put that nice new wharf in for us there, which is very good. But it was actually a replacement for the original wharf there, because while Shelley Beach has been connected by road for many years now, if you're in the 1920s and 1930s and wanted to come out here to Shelley Beach, you had to catch one of those regular steamers which would operate from Helensville, and that would be the way you'd get to Shelley Beach in those days. But of course today, we've got a nice hill road here to Shelley Beach. the harbours will be coming today. We'll turn Kewpie Too around now, head back into the river and our destination back there at Parakai. But I'll just put a few landmarks out as we turn around. Directly to the left-hand side of the boat there, you can see the old par side there, the Maratahi par side. You'll see where the mangroves are, a little bit of a shell beach there, just to the north of the shell beach, the old par side of Maratahi. Looking beyond the par side of Maratahi, if anyone's ever played golf at the South Kaipara Heads Golf Club, well that's directly beyond the par side there. Now that range of hills you can see again to the left, that is the South Kaipara Peninsula. Now you'll see where the South Kaipara Peninsula ends. It looks like it's the same part of the land, but there's not. You'll see where the peninsula ends, and there's some land way in the distance to the left-hand side of the boat there. That is the Poto Peninsula, that land in the distance. Now you'll see an area where there's no horizon, you can't see any land. To the left of where there's no horizon there, you'll come back onto the Poto Peninsula there. There's a gap between the South Kaipara Peninsula and the Poto Peninsula of some 5 miles. Now we can't see that gap or the entrance or the Tasman Sea today or the Kaipara Bar because it's actually around the corner from the South Kaipara Peninsula and the Poto Peninsula in the distance there. So to get access to that land you can see in the distance to the left-hand side of the boat, apart from going on Kewpie Too, the other way to do it is to drive. You've got to drive to Dargaville and come all the way down the Poto Peninsula from Dargaville over to the left-hand side of the boat there. So if we were to go to Dargaville by boat, what we'd be doing is just heading off where there's no horizon. Where you can't see any land there, you just head off there, because you're not really looking out to sea. It's all sheltered inland waterways. You're looking right across the Kaipara Harbour and in towards the northern Wairau River. You get access to places such as Ruawai, the rivers that run into Tinapai, Pahi, Batley, Mangarodo, also the Port Albert River. That's all over there where there's an area with no horizon. Poto Point, the Poto Peninsula, as I say, is directly off to the left-hand side of the boat, way in the distance here, and it was the old marine centre, the marine station here on the harbour. This is where the harbour master, pilots, signal station operators, they were all based there in the heyday of the shipping industry. Over Auckland Anniversary Weekend and again in February, Kewpie Too will be running excursions from Shelley Beach right across to Poto Point, and we'll be spending some time ashore at Poto Point there before returning. As we just keep coming around there, the land you can see to the left-hand side of the boat now, that is the Tapora Peninsula. The Tapora Peninsula at one stage was known as the Okaikura Peninsula, but they changed the name because they a little bit confused with an Okaikura down the South Island somewhere. The peninsula there, to get access to the land on the Tapora Peninsula, you must drive to Wellsford, north Wellsford there, and from Wellsford you head out through Port Albert and you can drive right down the Tapora Peninsula. You'll also see the little round island off to the left-hand side of the boat. That's a place called Motorimu Island. Motorimu Island, it's a sandstone island, rises around about 150 feet sheer from the water's edge. Quite a large muttonbird colony. The muttonbirds are what's known as the northern shearwater. They live in big burrows burrowed into the sandstone across to the left-hand side of the boat there. Area beyond Motorimu is the area of Tauhoa, and there's a lot of kauri mills there on the Tauhoa River in the early days. As we keep coming around there, still looking to the left-hand side of the boat, the big high dark bushy hill over to the left there, that is a place called Mount Auckland. Mount Auckland is part of the national walking tracks, and there's a very good walk right up to the summit of Mount Auckland. Extensive views of the Kaipara Harbour, west coast, and right across the east coast can be seen from the summit of Mount Auckland. And to get access to Mount Auckland, you make your way from Helensville, once again through Kaukapakapa, that's State Highway 16. You'll come to a place called Glorin, and you'll see the Mount Auckland walkway all marked off there.
No.
Looking to the left as we come around, there's lots of little creeks and inlets there off the Kaipara Harbour running inland there. Mackerel, if you've headed north on that State Highway 16, you'll come to the very interesting looking arch bridge on State Highway 16, well that's the Mackerel River, which is virtually just to the left-hand side of the boat there.
Fire.
And And over to the left-hand side of the boat, Wayne, the distance there, we can see the township of Helensville. Helensville, some 12 miles distant from where we are here at the moment. Helensville founded there in 1863 and built on the hill overlooking this waterway which was to be such a focal point to those early settlers. Now, Helensville was the transport hub for the whole Kaipara. It was the railhead, so large steamers and scows, etc. would all feed from Helensville to all these northern ports. So in earlier times, people would catch a train from Auckland as far north as Helensville. They'd join one of these vessels across the Kaipara Harbour, and they could actually get to about 15 miles west of Whangarei, just on the Northern Wye Road to Dargaville. Take the day creek steamer from Dargaville to some 15 kilometres west of Whangarei. So very important in the early transport into Northland was the township of Helensville with the train and the ferry steamers running through the Kaipara.
I wanted a drink. I'm really thirsty now. Not fair, Tom. No, not happy. I want a drink.
Go down and get a Coke.
You go buy it.
No.
Well, I've got no money. I can afford for that.
Very, very early.
You've got fresh water in the
I
bag.
was looking forward to iced tea. No,
There's a very large bottle at home.
that's no good at home, is it?
What?
Large bottle of drink. You grab me some
There's a
water,
large bottle of iced tea.
please? You grab me some water, please?
You'll have to go and get it yourself.
Grab it, please.
Here.
Thank you very much. I'm not talking to you anymore. I'm not talking to you anymore. You heard me? No.
Sorry we drank all your iced tea.
Please say that to the camera.
Thank you.
1 Don't, Thomas. Yeah, spray it on them.
Doink.
Doink, 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 doink. Stand there, please, babe. Told you. Keep bringing people. We're recording it. Watch the girls.
Oh, we're turning. We're turning.
Yeah, we're going to go and turn onto that pole. We're going to leave you on there.
No. Stick you on top of that pole
Yeah,
up
sit you
there.
on top. Ready?
Sit on top of that, Tom? Tom? You want to sit on top of that?
No.
You sure?
Yes.
No.
Jacket off. Oh my gosh.
Not too much because it goes really thick. You're doing all over your face.
How does he do it? Does he feel the heat?
I can wear a winter jumper.
Oh my god. You're sick. You're sick.
Just over half an hour to go.
Huh?
Over half an hour to go. It's 12:30.
Yeah.
Hey, 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 hey.